Dusk comes on quickly in these Daytona winter days, but here in the track's strange world, it never deepens fully into night, entering instead an unnerving twilight zone of artificial light, the track's lighting system mixing with the headlights of the cars that will last nearly half the length of the race. Dusk is a time of change, and you can feel the tempo of the race change, not slowing down, but deepening, each team discovering its own particular internal rhythms, the way its car goes best over the long haul.
Prophetic words from our Sam Posey as we welcome you back just 93 minutes or so into this year's running of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. I'm Bob Barsha with Tommy Kendall and Justin Bell up high in the announce booth above start finish. Andrew Maria and Jamie Howe are down in the pit lane. We have seen all kinds of problems for these teams early on in the race, unless, of course, your name is Chip Ganassi, whose teams and cars have been functioning beautifully to this point. Scott Pruitt, pole sitter for the race, remains in the car on this stint. They've already made a round of pit stops. Pruitt's still in the car. He leads Max Angelelli as we await the green flag. More pit action going on now. His third lap means the pits are open to every team. Let's check our onboard cameras. On board with Derek Whitus in the 25 car. This is the 69, Anthony Lazzaro from my neck of the woods down in Atlanta, Georgia. The FXDD with AIM Autosport Ferrari 458. Sylvain Tremblay, whose company Speed Source has done incredible work to get these new GX class Mazda Speed 6s or Mazda 6s with their diesel engines onto the grid. But the failure of one of those cars was the reason we are currently under caution.
And it's interesting how the officials are treating the cautions, much like in a playoff football game or a basketball game. The teams are watching how the officials are officiating. In some races, that would have been automatic cautions every time you had a car on the apron. So these are the things you saw on the very first yellow. We saw the Ganassi car hit the pits right away, which if there had been a caution, that would have for sure been the right way to go. And so that's part of the strategy, is saying, okay, what's going to draw a caution, what's not, and factor that in going forward.
This is something we didn't talk much at the top of the show about, and those are the changes in the way Grand Am Rolex runs their races in 2013. There's a new sheriff in town. He sees things differently. Some of the procedures have been changed, and some of the teams, frankly, are chafing under the new rule.
Well, it's Paul Walter is the new race director, and this is the first evidence, outward evidence of the merger that doesn't take place with the cars until 2014. But Paul Walter is the race director for the American Law Series and here, and so he's implementing some of his procedures, and some of the teams that are used to doing it a certain way are going to have to figure out the new ways.
As we mentioned, some teams have had a litany of problems since the original green flag in this race. Jamie Howe has one of those stories.
I just checked in with Jeff Braun, the engineer on the number 61458 that you see right now. The car is back out on track. Obviously, they went back into the garage and they replaced the ECU that also controls the gearbox. They thought they were having electrical connection issues. Right now, everything seems to be fixed by switching out that ECU. He said their lap times are back up. This caution is actually helping them because they're able to go through all the systems on the car just to check everything again and make sure it's fine. But they seem to be running competitively.
And right now behind the wheel of that car is Jeff Siegel, last year's co-champions in the GT division among drivers, sharing with Emil Asentato. Those two drivers have split and are driving different cars this year. There goes one of those new Sky Active diesel Mazdas. A bold move by Mazda as their legendary rotary engine begins to be phased out here in North America. They're coming on with alternative technologies, and that's what the GX class, is all about, is bringing in the kinds of technologies, diesel, hybrid, whatever it might be, and have a class to race in while they develop those technologies. And they are really good-looking cars, I have to say.
Yeah, you mentioned how experienced that Sylvain's operation is, and they'd done extensive dyno work, but because the car was held up, the new longer wheelbase and so forth, they didn't weren't able to test the engine in the car, and the problems didn't show up. No problems whatsoever on the dyno, and only when it was bolted in the car.
And remember that at the test, they only had one car that was still being worked on in the paddock there. And the thought to all of us that they would have 3 here was almost inconceivable. Remember, they made every single part of that car was fabricated at Speed Source. So extraordinary that they're here. Just to give you a little social update, as we came from the studio on the infield to make our way up to the booth here, the infield is jammed and people are settling in. The Rolex 24 is an event like no other in sports cars in North America. So just so you know at home, everyone here is representing you very well.
You saw the number 50 Highway to Hell Daytona prototype in the hands of Ian James. That car went behind the wall for transmission repair. It's only now coming back onto the track. Front man for that team is also the front man for Rock Legends AC/DC, Brian Johnson, who drove this race last year, wanted to drive it this year, but couldn't because the band has signed a new album contract and their insurers wouldn't allow it.
Go.
Now, a big change is the implementation that now on restarts, the initial start, you're not allowed to even pull out a line before you cross the line, much like NASCAR and Grand Am has done forever. Now, on restarts, as soon as the green flag is displayed, the race is on, no matter where you're at. So the drivers were having a hard time seeing the flag because of the glare with the setting sun. Most teams, as a rule, with this type of procedure, if you're way back in the pack, the teams call the green for you. And look at this. That Taylor is really showing his nose, and this is his first laps in the car. Remember, Pruitt's up to speed. Pruitt's warm. He's been in the car since the start. But the Chevys are showing the first real speed they've shown really all year.
But this is the time to make your jump, isn't it, Tommy? Because you never know how the car in front is going to feel, and it changes from stint to stint. So maybe Pruitt's car is just not feeling the same, and Angelelli is all over him. And right now, for him to get the lead on this lap would be a significant psychological thing for the team.
So I made my first missed call already. So this is...
Welcome aboard. Okay, now we just witnessed a restart under the new procedure. Jamie Howes with defending race champion, team owner Michael Shank.
We saw on that restart Michael Shank, Chris coming in the car. He jumped from 3rd all the way back to, it looks like, 7th. How are these rules playing into the race?
I mean, you just saw it right there. It's going to take us a little time. This is Chris's first time in a DP, first start ever, so we're not too worried about it. The car's pretty good. We're not as strong as the BMWs in a straight line, but we're going to keep at it and learn a little bit from these new restart procedures and new yellow flag procedures, and just get the hang of it and just be cool.
It is a 24-hour race. You won the race last year. What's it going to take to repeat?
Luck. As you saw, the 60 car already had some bats, so hopefully that's that. We got a lap back on that run. So now we're 6 laps down. We'll keep working at it and get that Stanley 60 car back up there.
Once the green flag waves, as Tommy explained, you are free to race. And you saw a good example of it right there. But going along with what you said, Tommy, if you're in a car further back up the queue, I can imagine it would be really difficult to see that flag.
It is difficult, but because you can go racing as soon as they call green near your ear, you see guys like Gidley was really spooled up, ready to go, and made a move around one of the Ganassi cars.
Let's take another look from on board the number 67 Porsche 911 GT3 car. It's the Chrome racing machine. And you can see what happens when you arrive at speed in that corner. Back on track. But lost all kinds of track position, and a little pop for good measure, hit by the 80 car.
Well, that really, I think he was kind of out of sorts and was trying to come back on.
That was Tracy Crone driving the car. You have a problem on the 80 now. Looks like you straight lined the chicane, so you have to come to a full stop at those cones and gain no competitive advantage. Otherwise, you will be penalized.
But something was wrong with the car after the contact. You saw it out of the onboard that there was smoke showing, so suspension damage.
And he's still parked over there at the chicane exit.
But that is actually good driving by him because he's safely out of the play of everyone else. But hopefully you might see another look at that. But this is very different. Remember, the sun works in your advantage one way and your disadvantage the other. Although when you're heading into the bus stop, you do look in your mirrors and it's pretty messy.
And so you saw the schmozzle, whatever you want to call it, in turn one. Tracy Crone first laps in the car, and so he's kind of out of sorts trying to get back on, and he basically apexed that, even though he was going slowly and didn't need to apex that second little wiggle, and that's where he got into trouble. Number 25 car, another one of the Mazdas off.
Derek Whitus
driven off from, looks like the car maybe is without power. Yes, he's hanging a left back behind the wall. It's one of the things these cars have.
52 Audi.
Turn one.
Down in one.
Of all the repaving ever done at a racetrack anywhere in the world, that extra bit they put down there in turn 1, 2, or whatever you call it, was brilliant. Because in the old days, remember, Tommy, you used to just go off and you were in misery in there.
Whatever it costs to do it, it has saved money.
It has saved a lot. But last year, sometimes you have the choice to make of trying to spin in the corner or go straight on, and I think that's what often happens. I think that's what just happened to the R8.
Well, I remember when you got stuck in the middle of the track last year when you had your car issue. That's one of the things that some teams talk about and rehearse, is if you have an issue, you saw that Mazda get to the left, you always want to go where the team has access, because unlike Le Mans, where the driver cannot leave a circle around the car and no aid can enter that box, here you can work on the cars. So you want to make sure you're in a place where the teams can get access.
There's the 80 now creeping around through NASCAR turns 3 and 4. Still a long way to go to get to the pit lane. There's the 44, defending champions in GT from the Rolex 24 last year. Andrew Marriott is standing by with one of its star drivers.
I certainly am, and Andy Laddie, that was an exciting first double stint from you. Put it in the lead of the GT, but bit of an incident with Nick Tandy. Did you see what happened to Nick? You were racing him.
Just as we were catching the first GX car, it looked like he moved offline a tiny bit to crisscross him coming out, and then when we got to the next corner, maybe he had some marbles on his tires or something, because the rear end stepped a little bit and it was just never able to turn in. And at that point I kind of let my eyes go from him and just looked down at the apex, trying not to follow him right into it. But that car was real fast. He was real strong. Obviously Tandy's a really good driver. It just probably a little bit of junk on the track, and he just got caught up in it.
Now this GT class, we've got Audi in there really trying hard. You've got Ferrari. It's not going to be an all Porsche deal, is it?
No way. I mean, on top of Ferrari and Audi stepping up their game really big this year, you've got the usual contenders of the Corvette, the Camaro, and the BMW that are always there. But this Flexbox Porsche is really, really strong, and these Magnus guys have worked their tails off to give me probably the best Porsche in this field, and I was proud to have it, because the guys always going up against Pat and Nick and those other guys, and those Audis, man, we're real strong. The Porsches are real strong initially when the tires are good, but as soon as the tires start to come off, that downforce from that Audi helps them out, and they start chugging.
Andy, you've got 7 of these watches, but you've given 6 of them away, but you've still got people you want to give them to.
There's a long list, yes. This one would be between 2 people this year if it happens. Hopefully we can get 2 this year. Hopefully we get this one in the championship, so it's no bother. But it's kind of a tradition. Fortunately, it's become a tradition because I've been fortunate to be with good teams and get a handful of them. So it's been nice.
Thanks very much. And there's an interesting poster down here that has got the team on. Maybe we can take a look at that. And back to the booth.
There's the poster. That Magnus Racing team does this every year with a different theme. They really do have fun.
And that one is fitting. You mentioned that Andy Lally has 7 of those Rolexes. He is Lord of the Rolex, and he's already got his eyes set on 8 and 9.
Great battle here in the GT class. We're looking at 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th place. All Porsches and all battling. And notice that number 62 car right there with the red and white running behind the famed 59 from Brumos. That car from Snow Racing with Wright Motorsports features the first ever mother-son driving combination in Rolex 24 history. Melanie Snow and her teenage son Madison are driving together. And here's a look at them over in the garage area. Mother and son. Melanie said she invited her husband to come back out of retirement and drive as a family. He said, no, I think I like it right where I am. On the sofa watching here on Speed. At least we hope he is.
I did a little racing with my mom when I went through the Bondurant school when I was 16. My mom wanted to know what this was all about. My dad had done it, my brother had done it. So we went through, and And she likes to tell people that I was the fastest and she was the slowest. But after one session, she passed me. She said, I passed you. I said, Mom, I was out of gas. But my mom had a license plate that said Racy Mom on her car, but not nearly as racy as Melanie Snow.
Well, she's a hoot. I did a race in school with my wife, and she kicked my butt in the autocross, so I got nothing. Little damage up ahead. Not at all unusual, even this early in the 24-hour odyssey that is the Rolex 24 at Daytona. We'll be back. February 22nd, the world's toughest truckers hit the high banks here at Daytona for the can't-miss trucks race of the year. Strap in for 250 miles of wide-open truck racing and a fight to the finish that will take your breath away. Don't miss the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series here at Daytona, February 22nd, 7 Eastern, live on Speed. Back with Tommy Kennel and Justin Bell up high, Jamie Howe and Andrew Marriott down in the pit lane. We're following the 0-1 of Scott Pruitt, who took we're on board with the number 3 of Stefan Sarazan after a lengthy stay in the garage to fix the gearbox seal that Dorsey Schrader talked about earlier. Sarazan is back on track in that brand new Corvette DP. Let's get more now with Jamie Howe.
I just checked in with the team, Bob, and they went ahead and replaced the entire gearbox. They said it's way too early in the race to be taking any kind of chances. Hopefully they can get all of their time in the garage done early, and they're not back out.
The fondest wish of everybody who enters a 24-hour race. We're going to have problems. Get them out of the way early.
47 laps down.
Now we pick up 0-1.
Well, well, well. The poker is over. And Max Angelelli is they're swapping. Pruitt just ran the fastest lap of the race. And Angelelli is right there with him. So I think the only place where there was more sandbagging going on than here all month was during Hurricane Sandy. And now they were given a little bit of a break. So they drew exactly what they needed to. Supposedly that gain in restrictor only is worth 4 or 5 horsepower. But the amount of gain in lap time is, it confirmed what most people thought, that the Chevys were actually quite competitive. And we're trying to draw a charge, if you will, and it worked.
There's the number 70, slow once again, Sylvain Tremblay, one of the Mazda 6s that his company Speed Source built.
I mean, I really think that we should look at this in a very positive way. They achieved an amazing amount to get here. Their challenge was to get here. This is a 24-hour test for Mazda and Speed Source, and the drivers, they've got some amazing young drivers. Tristan Nunez on the team. So this is part of, I don't think Sylvain will be surprised by this. He'll be disappointed, but this is part of what they could expect when you only finish a car as you pull it off the trailer.
No question. They brought one car here unpainted and struggled with it, with overheating, intercooler issues. It's got a very trick twin turbo setup on it, a small turbo that feeds a larger turbo of that 2.2 liter Skyactiv diesel engine.
See how much debris there already is just offline. That's something to keep in mind. Even though they might be going to the garage area, he's steered away from there. See smoke showing out the exhaust pipe. It's the GX class. Unfortunately, the timing of this merger has really kind of messed with that class a little bit. The idea was to encourage people to come with stuff they wouldn't otherwise bring, and Mazda committed.
Aboard with the 13 Rumbug Racing Audi R8. Currently in the hands of Audi factory driver Christopher Haas. Audi definitely. Oh, we've got a big crash. The 80 car, who just pitted with a problem, has made heavy contact with the wall. Looks like the right side damage is severe. Certainly the right rear tire is down.
Yeah, to spin there, something has to have gone wrong. So chances are he had a right rear let go on.
You can see it's just coming off the banking at NASCAR Turn 2 onto the super stretch.
I guess it's possible he got onto the apron.
See if we can see what happened. Yeah, he certainly didn't get up to the wall.
It does look like the right rear's down
there. A long spin.
Very economical, though. He didn't take up much track space, did he? He spun very gracefully on his own axis. I actually had a big spin coming off there in a Daytona prototype, and I can assure you it's not the place to do it.
Oh, my goodness. Now let's get back to Andrew Marriott with more on Audi.
Yeah, well, I'm with Scott Keogh, who heads up the operation here in the United States. Scott, there's one big race in America, in the world, in sports cars you haven't won. It's here, but you're trying hard.
Well, that's correct. You know, we have a great history in Sebring, of course, Le Mans. We came here last year for a little adventure, and we're a lot more competitive this year. We're feeling pretty good.
And this program, it's important just to sell the R8 sports car or the whole range.
I think it's to sell the whole range. I mean, Audi is a brand that likes to race. We like to compete, so certainly it sells Audi. But of course, the R8, it's a great road car, and we're really excited to get it here as a real race car in Grand Am. So it does a little both.
Now, you mentioned Sebring. Obviously, the race has gone away from the World Endurance Championship, but you haven't gone away from Sebring because you're bringing an R18 there.
Exactly right. We're bringing 2 cars there in March. We're excited for it. We're the most successful manufacturer there, and we thought it'd be a shame not to go out with a proper farewell. So we'll be there.
But Scott, some parts of the motor industry have got problems, but I think Audi, you sold more cars last year in your whole history.
You're exactly right. Here in America, we broke a record. We believe in motorsports. I think some people use motorsports just to come and go as a marketing effort. Certainly, we back to marketing, but for us, it's the real heart and soul of the brand. We're here to stay.
Thanks very much.
And thank you, Andrew. Here's a look at just a few of the races won by Audi last year. With the R8, the Bathurst 12-hour, 24 hours of Zolder, basically a touring car 24-hour event. Same for the 24-hour of the Nürburgring, with 200 or so cars in that field. And of course, the R18 e-tron Quattro at the 24 hours of Le Mans. And they're hybrids, and as you heard Scott Keogh say, 2 of those incredibly high-tech LMP1 cars will bid farewell to that class of racing at Sebring coming up in March.
Yeah, and you know, you only have to see every time those white, red, and silver jackets hit a pit lane, you better be nervous. But it's very interesting. I do a lot here with Audi in the States, and they're very involved in the entertainment industry. You know, they're part of the Iron Man franchise, and so I think Audi, which is a massive company now, is certainly impressive to be here in racing terms, because you notice them on the road, and now you see them here at Daytona, which is kind of an odd thing to see for me, because that R8, one of my favorite cars, but to see it out there on this racetrack battling with Porsche and Ferrari is fantastic.
There's the number 56 AF Corsa Waltrip car, and this is Rui Aguas. We saw when we were on board with the Audi exactly how much he is hustling in there. He's right up towards the front, running in 5th in class right now. And not a very well-known name, but has been partnered up with Rob Kaufman for a number of years. And watch how much curb. This is, you get an idea of how hard he's running. Here comes the Doran car down the inside. It might mask that a little bit.
I ran to get out of it.
Oh, he did. I ran with them at Petit Le Mans. You know, we finished 3rd in class there, and Rui is a very talented driver. He's also one of the factory test drivers in their road car program.
We'll see a couple of DPs. Not making much of a dent at Aguas in his Ferrari. Now we've got a spin. Speaking of Ferraris, this is the Extreme Speed 03. A quick spin. That's Ed Brown behind the wheel. Now let's get to Jamie Howe.
Going back to the 56 Ferrari with Rui Aguas behind the wheel. He's actually going to do a triple stint in the car, so he's going to be in for about 2.5 hours. Clint Boyer will then be getting in the car after him, and he'll only do a double. So Rui pushing the car hard right now. They're doing that on purpose, trying to build up a little bit of a lead before Clint gets in for his first taste of sports car racing.
Well, we heard Clint Boyer talk at the top of our broadcast about his first experience. Unique environment around this garage at Waltrip Racing. And he'll do it just as the sun goes below the horizon. So he'll go from daylight to dark. Runner-up in last year's NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship. We've got a break coming up. We'll give you a look at the top 5 in each class. We'll be back with more. Sunset not far away here at Daytona Beach, Florida. Stay with us. Welcome back to Speed's coverage of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Let's take you down through the entire field, beginning with pole sitter Scott Pruitt. Is Chip Ganassi racing with Felix Sabates BMW Riley prototype with about a 2-second lead over Max Angelelli in a Corvette DP. Look at that lineup of drivers. Let you recognize just about every name. Our first car in the GT class runs 14th in the hands of Olivier Beretta, very experienced racer over the years. Anthony Lazzaro in a Ferrari, and then John Edwards in the only Chevrolet Camaro in the field from Stevenson Racing. Jeroen Bleekemolen in 21st place in a Porsche, one of several drivers who raced a 24-hour event in Dubai just a couple of weeks ago and won the overall driving a Mercedes SLR, I believe. SLS, excuse me. You're my Mercedes expert, TK. As you can see, the number 60 defending champion car from Michael Shank Racing is running well back in the field, currently in the hands of A.J. Allmendinger. And the final runners may never be known. But there they are, including Bruno Junqueira. Remember that name from his days in Champ Car. Stefan Sarazan with the 3-car, a Corvette Daytona prototype that's been a long time in the garage. And Michael Marsal has 000 next to his name. That car suffered damage and did not start the race.
You can see the sun straight through that windscreen into the driver's eyes, through the very fast, just a little lift kink there as you're on the infield. And as you go through this right-hander here, for a brief second you have respite, but you know coming up onto the banking is, although it's quite a simple corner, you are in the shadow of the main speedway there. So just for a few seconds he has nothing to worry about. For Scott Pruitt though, I think he could go the whole way around here blindfolded.
It's one of those things that's you notice after you've run so many hours in darkness, the muscle memory and literally you feel the apex curve, the vibration, how the car rotates. You literally know where the edge of the road is, and you kind of look to confirm. But you really can drive on autopilot and go just as quickly.
On board with Sebastian Bourdais, currently in 4th place.
I remember the days when at the height of his IndyCar career, he was one of the guys we weren't ever able to talk to, get near. He would never smile. And now I remember standing on the bus stop at the train station at Le Mans 2 years ago, and he's there in a pair of shorts just saying goodbye to a buddy. So now he's one of the easiest guys to talk to in the pit lane.
It's funny, I think after that he went to F1 and things didn't go like he liked, and he came back and he realized life isn't so bad. I was a little surprised that he, hasn't, 4 consecutive titles. And I was talking to Peter Barron about him yesterday, and when they were trying to come up with someone to run on the 6 hour, he said there are a lot of good drivers available, but kind of one of the trademarks of Barron is he wants to try to do things differently than other people have. And it just struck him, he said, Bourdais, and so he got in touch with him. He said, who knows him? And he invited him out, and they got on well with the team, and he's been a real star for that team as well. You can see the sun right in his eyes. He's got a light smoked visor. He's, some people run a dark one, but some people maybe have a lighter one for later at night.
And his wife have 2 young children now. He has a look about him that might be described as bookish with his glasses, but he is fierce and fast in a race car. On board with the 90 Spirit of Daytona. Taylor behind the wheel. Yes, racing against his father's team, Wayne Taylor Racing, and his brother Jordan, who was in the 10 car.
Clear. This corner, as you go up onto the banking here, Tommy, as a driver, it's one of the most instant sort of evaluations of your corner exit you can ever have, because you've got this long straight and you know exactly by the revs where you are as you upshift against the markers on the wall there, exactly how well you exited. And of course it's really a great place to set up for an overtaking maneuver down into the bus stop. I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that final turn there onto NASCAR 2. 1, 2.
You can see how they bang over the curbs there in the bus stop. A lot of, you have to because of the pace of this race, but a lot of wear and tear on the chassis using that much curb. Look how relaxed he is holding the wheel. The banking, even though it's not difficult from being on the limit standpoint, a lot of load through the body, especially taller guys like Ricky. Your knees are bent, your hip flexors. It's something you don't think about. Physically, this race is much more difficult than Le Mans from a track standpoint. Obviously, these cars don't pull the G-force of an LMP1 car, but there's really no rest for the body. And then, of course, you're always in the middle of a fight with traffic.
That's right. There's about as many cars in this race as there is in the annual 24 Hours of Le Mans. But the track is less than half the length. So traffic always an issue. And as you see, the track is almost always turning, except on the long 3,000-foot backstretch. Anthony Lazzaro. Unmistakable sound of a Ferrari.
Anthony's a really strong, solid driver. You see him every year out here. And, you know, I've raced against him. I don't know if you did, Tom, but a really hard guy. And he's very fast. And it's nice to see him in a good ride like this.
Well, with the shuffling, the Ferraris are running one. You see Aguas has come around Lazzaro and is trying to catch the lead duo, but we've got Ferraris in first, third, and fourth at the moment. So the ebbs and flows of the GT battle.
A little wave there. That's just it's obviously someone was quite gracious and courteous, and they said that in the driver's briefing. For those of you at home, we should tell you that the driver's briefing is really a spectacle. Every driver that you could name in your wish list to see as a fan is sitting there. And I have to say, Paul Walters handled it very well. He was very to the point, very concise. But he said, be gracious. And he echoed what Hurley Haywood, our Grand Marshal, said. He said, you can get to the end of this race if you are gentlemen and gentle ladies about it. Of course, you take that with a pinch of salt, because sometimes you forget the gentle part.
You are a racing driver. Paddle shifting, yet another wave, keeping busy. In addition to driving this weekend, Anthony is also coaching some of the drivers in the North American Ferrari Challenge. They raced here yesterday at Daytona. You'll see that event on speed next Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Those Ferraris are fast. Here's David Donahue. He is the leader in the GX class in the number 16. Porsche from Napleton Racing, performance arm of Napleton Porsche in the Chicago area. More on that story with Andrew Marriott.
Yes, just look at that livery, the swirly green and blue. And that is a very famous livery. In fact, in 1970, one of those fantastic Porsche 917s ran in that livery. It was actually a martini back car, but they decided they wanted to do something different. And they painted what they called that psychedelic colour scheme on it. Well, the car went on to finish in second place. That certainly didn't hurt it. Gerard LaRousse, who went on to be a Formula One boss, and Willie Cowson were the drivers. So great to see that team remembering the old days and putting on that fantastic colour scheme. Now, I wonder if next year they'll come back and do the other Porsche 917 iconic scheme, which was the Pink Pig. I don't know if you remember it, but the car was all cut into pieces and different cuts of pork meat were written in German amongst these different sections of Pete. It was absolutely extraordinary. If you can find a picture of it on the internet, you ought to look at it. So this year we got the psychedelic car. Maybe next year we'll have the Pink Porker.
I remember that car well, Andrew. Now you see more grass on the radiator intake from the number 68 in the hands of Dutch driver Dennis van der Laar. Here's how it got there. Decided discretion was the better part of valor, I guess, rather than going up. Well, I guess sooner or later I have to get back on the racetrack. And that's how van der Laar did it.
All you have to do, remember, is not affect the car in any potentially terminal way. So whatever it takes to get back onto the track, even if it's a little bit of extra cornering, you have to do it, because it can affect you later in the race, if not immediately. So I'd say, you know, if that's what he needed to do, he did it.
Still 3 wide, doesn't know you're there.
And look at this battle as Scott Pruitt gets around the number 8 Starworks car, and look at the muscle on that BMW Riley.
One final note on the Napleton car. I believe Napleton Racing founded the all Porsche Cayman Racing Series that ran last year, and all of the cars were dressed up in period livery, including the famous Martini and Rossi Silver and the Psychedelic and the Big Bid, and the list goes on and on.
I actually drove the Martini car at Sebring in that series. It was really cool. And once you bought the car, it was locked into that livery. And so, and that one that the green and purple, known as the hippie car, of course. So it's really cool. And this is an outgrowth of that program. They worked with the Cayman so much. No involvement for Porsche factory with this Cayman program. This is all a Napleton effort.
Good look there into the cockpit. Chip Ganassi Racing with Felix Mattis. BMW Riley in the hands of pole sitter and current Rolex 24 race leader Scott Pruitt. We'll be back. Here's a look back at the highlights of the Rolex 24 thus far. Grand Marshal Hurley Haywood gave the command to start engines. Started the race with a Daytona prototype field. Got Richie Raggett. Scott Dixon was caught out on the outside front row and swallowed up by the field. Problems for the Conrad Orbit Racing Porsche early on. Nick Tandy, newest Porsche factory driver, multiple flat tires and a lot of body repair after a heavy impact on the driver's right. Problems also for the defending race champions from Michael Shank Racing. Broken piece in the left front suspension requiring lengthy repairs, and they are deep in the field, 6 laps down right now. Team Salem had to go around in their 43, one of 2 BMW Rileys in the field from that team. And a very tough debut in the GX class for the 00 Mazda 6. And its sister car, the 70, taken behind the wall by the man who built it, Sylvain Tremblay. Number 80 Porsche did heavy damage with a big spin off NASCAR Turn 2. And it has been pushed to the garage for further repairs. Back to live pictures now with Tommy Kendall and Justin Bell. Jamie Howe and Andrew Marriott down in the pit lane. I'm Bob Varsha, and there is your race leader, Scott Pruitt, who has been in this car since he started the race from pole position.
Coming up on 2.5 hours in the car, and Scott will be 53 years old in a month or so. And but I mean, there's not a fitter guy. He actually goes into a bit of a training camp between the Roar and now, that clears his schedule and does 2-a-day workouts so that he is absolutely fit as a fiddle.
And he also has a side business as a winemaker, does all the work himself, deeply interested in the science and art of making wines, and he makes some great ones. Here's the 77 Dallara with Ford power for a guy who's been coming to this racetrack for a long time. Kevin Doran, once a crew member for the late Al Holbert, whose team won this race on many occasions. He has a car in the field. One of its drivers is standing by with Andrew Marriott.
Yeah, one of his drivers, his famous driver, Paul Tracy. 22 seasons in IndyCar and Champ Car, Paul. 2003 IndyCar, Champ Car victor, of course. You're enjoying sports car racing now?
Well, I'm absolutely loving it. The DP class is great. It's a great formula. It's very competitive, and really thankful for Kevin Dorn for getting this new car on track. They've had a monumental effort to try to get this car. This car was a bare chassis 3 weeks ago, brand new and no body, and the team has put in 20-hour days for the last 3 weeks to get the new car ready. So big effort by the team. So we're just clicking them off, keep going, not getting in any trouble.
Any chance of you doing the Indy 500 this year?
No, I'm kind of hung my hat up on the IndyCar career. I'm trying to do more sports car racing. Signed on to do some TV work in Canada for the IndyCar races, covering the Indy 500 in Toronto and a few other races. So I'm coming over to the other side with you guys.
It's the dark side, Paul. Tell me, when are you next in the car?
I'm going out next for a couple hours.
That should be fun. There's always a lot of excitement around Paul Tracy. Great to see you here.
Thank you.
I spent some time with that team during the test, and Dr. Jim Lowe is one of the gentleman drivers in the car, and he's actually a brain surgeon, something no one has ever called Paul Tracy. And they had a really fun banter between the two of them. Paul loves to twist everyone's tail, and so he was twisting away on on Dr. Lowe, and Dr. Lowe finally came back at him, gave him some ribbon about his tattoos, and then it got into malpractice jokes and so forth and so on. So a pretty lighthearted bunch having a good time while they're serious about the racing.
Our GT leader is in the pits, Anthony Lazzaro. Driver change going on. Lazzaro gets out. We'll have to see who plugs into the transponder. His name will pop up on our timing and scoring screens.
I think it is Patrick Pillay who's getting in. I think when Lazzaro got out, he already changed the transponder, which is quite gracious of him.
Now Pilay's in the 30 car.
I apologize for that.
That's Emil Asentato, who was co-champion driver in the class last year with Jeff Siegel. As I mentioned, they are driving different cars in this year's Rolex 24. There you see the entire lineup.
Look at that. It's very nice having an adjustable seat, by the way. Normally you have the misfortune of driving with someone like Kendall here and need blocks on your feet. But you could roll it forward there. It looks like a pretty standard stop to me for the 69.
The graphic was incorrect. Guy Cosmo was scheduled to be in this car, but he is watching at home because he had a blood vessel break in his nose, and it took him a while to get it shut down and had to get it cauterized. So not according to the plan, but he's getting rested up, getting ready for Sebring.
Get well, Guy. Wild situation there. Dario Franchitti, three-time Indianapolis 500-mile race champion, remains in the 02 from Ganassi Racing and heads back out to Jamie Howe with the 90 car.
The 90 is also in, and Ricky Taylor will be staying in the car. So also just took the opportunity to pit, so pit lane is getting a little bit busy right now. We've got GT cars, the number 57 in GT that was leading in class. They also just made a pit stop. John Edwards did stay behind the wheel. We're also expecting the number 10 from Wayne Taylor Racing to be making a pit stop on this lap. These are all routine stops right now. Teams running through their paces. All of the stops have been quick. Nothing out of the normal. Fuel and tires.
Ricky Taylor staying on board. Looks like he loosened his belts up. There might have been some confusion about whether or not he was staying in the car or not. With the pit lane speed limit, that's a good time to kind of get, even if you're not all the way belted in on a driver change, it gives you a little time to get going before you release that pit lane speed limit. And here comes car number 1. Pruitt has gotten out after 2.5 hours in the car. Did not see who got in. We'll see that in a second. And the second place car is in as well.
Max Angelelli has been in this Velocity Worldwide sponsored Wayne Taylor Racing Corvette Daytona prototype. Let's find out what's going on with the 10 with Jamie.
Max Angelelli did get out. Jordan Taylor got in, but a bit of a miscue. They dropped the car off of the jacks before the gunman was finished with that right front tire. So the 01 has got a substantial lead from them on pit lane.
We've seen that on a couple of occasions. Teams out of practice when it comes to pit stops. There are very specific rules about how many air guns they can have over the wall and how many personnel to change tires, which can be very, very difficult. You have to choreograph it very carefully to get the tires where they need to be, the old ones and the new ones, and get the wheels changed.
And believe it or not, these guys, much like the drivers, there's no way to get ready physically like driving. There's no way to really, I mean, you can practice pit stops and so forth, but with the adrenaline pumping and so forth, these are their first pit stops since the end of last year. And Ganassi, you know, the teams try to practice it, but it's usually the last thing on the list. And unlike NASCAR, where they have dedicated over-the-wall guys, the guys that are over the wall here are working on the cars, they're doing the prep and so forth. So it's not as easy to do the pit stop practice.
We're seeing Pagenaud head out there. He was very impressive last year in IndyCar, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him this year. And it's great seeing him out there in the race. There's the 66 TRG car in the pits. Not sure what I think it looks like a regular stop to me, Tommy.
Yes, it does. And this is my teammates, Viper teammates, Kuno Whitmer and Dominic Farnbacher would drive with Ben Keating in that car.
Something inside the cockpit, maybe changing an electrical box or something. Wild livery on that car. And the 2 is in.
While we're doing this, you see that Sebastian is in there, but if you look on the door, he's actually listed as Seabass. And to show the kind of the spirit, you see Ryan, and then it says Allen, which is McNiss, C. Cow, which is Alex Popov, and Seabass. And if you look right next to you won't be able to see it, but there's a funny picture next to Ryan Dial's name. He and Peter Barron have become best buddies, and from the movie Ted, it's what is it? Super Buddy?
It's Super Buddy. Also.
Yeah, Super Buddy.
We also saw a stop from the
Thunder Buddy.
Brian Frizzell pitted the 5 and out. There's Scott Pruitt just out of the car. He had an animated conversation with their team manager, Tim Keene, there. Scott is still talking. He went to a headset either to protect his hearing or because he wanted to talk to whoever's in the car.
Talk about the belts there. Something about the adjuster on the left belt is maybe frozen and not releasing. That's what you do when you come in. Before you hit pit road, you're not allowed to unbuckle before you come to a stop. With in-car cameras, you can actually get popped on that. But you loosen your shoulder belts. You want to loosen the belts, and they're mounted with bungee cords that pull them up out of the way so that you don't sit on a belt when you're getting into the car.
And smiles all around now, so apparently it all worked well. Another break coming up, but a very special guest on the other side. So stay with us. Say goodbye to the sun on Saturday at the Rolex 24.
We're back at the 51st running of the Rolex 24-hour at Daytona. We've just seen some pit stops, some driver changes take place. One of those drivers that got out was Scott Pruitt. Scott, we saw you talking to your team manager. What do you debrief about when you get out of the race car?
Really kind of a download about the car, what's going on. Hi to my family at home. Just talking about how the car's changing from start to finish, what to expect, what to tell the driver going in. The track has changed since we started, significantly gotten cooler. It's changed the car characteristic. But the 01 Helmex BMW, it's running really good. It's easy to drive. I can really point my way through traffic. It's a little slow to get going on new tires, but after that, she's real solid, good for a whole run.
It seems like we've been having some trouble with shifters. How is the shifter in the 01?
It's great. I mean, like I said, it's easy to drive. It's fast. You can pick your way through traffic. You really got to be heads up because you'll get in a group of like 5 or 6 GT cars. They're racing, and you don't want to get caught up in their mess. So you really got to be thinking when you're going through those guys.
This is your 23rd Rolex 24-hour race. Are there any characteristics so far this early on that make this one different?
It's got to start doing the hours, you know. The car's good, which is good. We're able to put it where we want to, which is good. Now it's just letting the hours go by.
Scott Pruitt has won this race 4 times, and Bob, there's only one man who's won it more than him.
That's right, Jamie, and he joins us now, the Grand Marshal of the 2013 Rolex 24 at Daytona, 5-time overall winner, Hurley Haywood. Hurley, does it seem like only yesterday you won that first one in 1973?
Well, you know, I got really lucky and I was able to drive the replica of my 73 car today, and that was a pretty special deal. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long. It had an oil leak, and I brought it in, but it was fun to see that car and to see sort of piece the history as I go through and look at some of those great cars that I drove over the years. It's a pretty cool thing to be able to do that.
Now looking at you, I've only been at this not nearly as long as you. I've got no hair left. You look the same as 40 years ago. Is racing the fountain of youth for you?
Well, you know, first of all, I lived down in St. Augustine, so I sunk an 800-foot well down. So now I get to drink and shower in the fountain of youth. So that's part of it. But racing is something that I just love doing, and I think you're right. I think the racing is something that, you know, you do it, you love it, and it keeps you in good physical condition. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons why I think, you know, the youth is on my side.
So much has changed, yet so much may be the same. For you, as you look at Daytona 24 Hours now, what is the same as when you were doing it at the beginning of your career, and what has changed?
Well, I think the intensity of the racing has changed. I mean, God, when Peter and I started racing in 73 and 75, we used to do 4 and 5 hour shifts with no problem at all. And the pace was a very disciplined pace. We really were organized, and we were very strict with the pace. Nowadays, it is a sprint race. You are driving as hard as you can go for the full stint that you're in there. So it's like these segments. There's 24 one-hour segments of an individual sprint race. You go from kind of window to window. Your fuel stops, your tires. So we never could do that. The cars would simply not last that long if they were being driven like that. So now there's no worries, and away they go.
Close moment there for the current race leader, Sebastian Bourdais, in the number 2 car. Hurley, I'd like you to tell a story that you told last night at your Grand Marshal's Rolex dinner. I think the statute of limitations has probably run on the crime you committed when you drove 8 straight hours through the darkness. Tell me that story.
Well, you know, the guys I was driving with was a great team. Franz Blon was doing the prep on the car. And nobody ever talked about night driving or not liking night driving. And we got into dusk, and my co-drivers came up and they said, you know, we don't really like driving at night, and we want you to do most of the night driving. So I ended up doing an 8-hour shift at night, and there's a car that's
quick, yeah, 68. One of the TRG Porsches has gone around in a bad spot there in the chicane.
That's an easy place to spin out too. You know, you got some speed coming in. Got those bumps on the right there, so it's easy to spin it there. But that's a bad place for him to be.
At least he's facing in the right direction to spot a hole in the oncoming traffic, so he can get it turned around.
Now, you know, 5 overall wins. So finish your story. Finish your story.
So anyway, we got going, and we were really doing well, and we were moving up the ladder. And at every pit stop, I would jump out of the car. They had a little tent made up of some blankets. I would go in there, change the helmet, and then get back in. And IMSA, I'm sure, knew what was going on, but they were kind of looking the other way, and you know, it kind of worked out in the end.
Now, 5 overall victories, the most of anyone, and Scott Pruitt's been trying to tie it up with you for a number of years, and he's been knocking on the door. Records are made to be broken, but you probably don't think he needs to do it just yet.
Well, you know, I'd like to be the lone 5-time winner, but you know, Scott is still active. My kind of take on it is that I remained the leader while I was actively driving, and now I can't. I'm retired, so I can't really defend it. So, but if he gets it, that's great. If he goes to 7, that's great, or 6, and more power to him. He certainly got the team to do it.
Well, I heard a number of people comment on you. It was very brief what you said at the drivers' meeting today, but you said, I'm not going to tell you guys how to do it. You wouldn't be here if you wouldn't, but just, you know, conduct yourself as ladies and as gentlemen. That's one thing that stood out. You've always been dignified. You've raced like a tiger, but you've been very dignified and professional. Long before I ever drove a race car, you were great to my mom, my brothers. We used to race go-karts in the infield, that little putt-putt track at Laguna Seca. Little did I know I would go on to race against you and so forth, but I can't think of a chance that I can remember where you even lost your cool.
Well, I mean, there's been times when I've lost my cool, but I've just, you know, in the era of driving that I was sort of in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, our cars were so fragile that they really couldn't afford to be crashed into each other. And if you did crash into somebody, the chances of getting hurt were pretty, as you know, pretty great. So we were very disciplined, and we treated each other as gentlemen on the racetrack. We raced hard, but we always could trust the other guy that he wasn't going to put us into a bad position where we could, you know, have a mishap and have an accident. So I think that's the difference. Now, this young generation of drivers growing up is so used to sort of video games, and they just hit the reset button and away they go.
The safety of the car.
And the safety, yeah, safety of the car too.
As we see dusk falling well and truly here, and the sun's gone down, I think, was this one of your favorite times to be in the car because you can adapt to the night coming on?
I like the nighttime. I really enjoy driving at night. I never was lucky enough to get in the transition period. I always was sort of drove in the daylight, and then boom, next time I was in, it was completely black. The time I really like being in the car is at sunrise. When you see that sun come up over that east banking, and you say, oh man, I can see the end of the tunnel, and that was a cool thing. So I always loved being in the car at the sunrise.
There are the colors of the famous '59 Brumos Porsche that Hurley drove on so many memorable occasions, and the dealership up in the Jacksonville area that he now runs. Real quick final question, Hurley. Of all the famous names you've driven with, who was your favorite driving partner?
Oh boy, that's difficult. You know, I love driving with Al Holbert. Al Holbert was such a gentleman, and he was such a great guy. He was super fast, and we had great times together as teammates, and we had great times racing on the track side by side. He was always somebody I could completely trust.
Well, it's great chatting with you. Thanks for taking the time to come up and be with us up here in the booth. Grand Marshal Hurley Haywood. Thanks very much, Hurley.
Thank you very much.
We'll take another break. The moon is up and it's full. What surprises will it spark? We'll find out. We'll be back to the Rolex 24 at Daytona here on Speed in a moment.
We're back at the Rolex 24-hour at Daytona, where unfortunately for Mazda in the GX category, there are not one, not two, but three of the Sky Active diesels in the garage area. John Doonan, you've kind of been watching this whole program develop. You've been the head of it. What's going on here today?
Well, it's all part of a learning process, Jamie. At Mazda, we do things a little differently. We challenge ourselves to continue to get better. We could have picked a shorter race to start this project in, but we picked the Rolex 24. We've had some issues, some growing pains in the program. A couple of the cars will not be able to continue. We lost cylinders in the motor, but the 00 Visit Florida car will be back out. So the guys are continuing to fight, and you know, we've had a long history with rotaries and great success. We've opened this new chapter with Sky Active Clean Diesel, and this is just one step in the process. We'll continue to fight and continue to challenge ourselves.
When this class was announced last year, Mazda was really the first manufacturer to step up and say, you know what, we're going to develop something new. We're going to come out and race. How important is that to the future of the sport?
Coming to the GX class is very important for us, giving us the opportunity to showcase the 2014 Mazda 6, which is now hitting dealerships all across the U.S. We also are able to showcase Sky Active technology, which is Mazda's way of being more efficient with lighter weight and more efficient engines, transmissions, lighter weight bodies. And so we're really pleased to be able to present the whole suite, help launch the new Mazda 6 in the marketplace. We're just going to keep fighting. That's all there is to it.
We have a full year to watch that fight continue. The 00, as John said, will be back out.
And to see all the drivers, including Tristan Nunez there, helping out where they can, trying to get their colleagues comfortable in the car before they send it back out. There's the number 63, still shown as the leader in the GT class and 14th overall in the hands of Olivier Beretta. But a lap ago, he had an interesting excursion through the chicane on the backstretch.
You see the kind of lap time he's running. His last lap was within 7/10 of his fast lap of the race. And look at this, unforced error, in too hot, straight lines it. Lucked out that he didn't pack the grill full of grass. They'd be watching the engine temperature, but you know, we talked about the pace, and you know, obviously they're running 10-10, so things like that happen. But the guys that can avoid that are the ones that keep it on the island. For an unforced error, that's pretty much what took Lucas Luhr and damaged that Shank car, not the Shank car, the Star Wars car last year, and they didn't have the speed at the end when they needed it. So it's easy to sit up here and say, but I mean, they're running 10-10s, but to go off like that when you're by yourself, there's no extenuating circumstances, you've got to minimize that.
I'm very impressed by the pace of the Ferrari right now. I know the Porsches have sort of had a few problems of their own, but you know, in practice and qualifying, the Ferrari 458 is really built around traction control. It's not running it here. So it was finding traction really difficult in the horseshoe and in the carousel and coming up on through turn 6. And the 911, of course, by its pure dynamics and having the engine so low and in the rear, it just has better squat and better sort of weight transfer. So obviously the Ferraris aren't doing that bad, but they have good high speed, good top speed on the banking.
Now, the other side of what I just said is when you have a clear track, you get frustrated, you're getting bottled up in traffic. When you have a clear track, especially into the chicane, you can lose 3 seconds in the chicane getting stuck behind someone. So when you can really charge the braking zone and so forth, that's when you want to make hay. So that's also when you're pushing the hardest. As Hurley said, you carry quite a bit of speed into that corner, and so it's easy to get it wrong now.
He said make hay or cut hay, because that's what he did.
There's the second place car in class, the Stevenson Camaro, in the hands of young John Edwards. Lives in New York, student when he can at New York University. And he's already had a long career in motorsports, selected by the Red Bull Young Driver Program in his tweens to go over to Europe and race karts and then open wheel cars. Came back to the States, and here he is racing in the Rolex Series.
They got that car very well sorted. When you just even look at sort of the center of gravity in that Camaro compared to the Ferraris and the Porsches, yet it wheels its way around here very impressively. That whole Stevenson team do a really good job of getting that car prepared.
John Edwards is a student. I mean, he got such an early start. I want to say he took advantage of a waiver and raced Skip Barber Series when he was 13
I believe he
years
did.
old.
Won championships in Pro Mazda, and then in Atlantic when that series existed. Here's Clint Boyer passing on the outside, a part of Daytona International Speedway that he knows very well, and now he enters a part that he doesn't know very well at all, the infield road course.
Clear low, Clint. Clear low.
Now break.
I talked to Rob Kaufman, and he said, looking at the data overlay, the way he's driving the bus stop, he says, looks nothing like their traces. They said, but he's getting around here pretty well. So I think they should make him a brand ambassador for Ferrari in the Midwest. What do you think?
Well, there's no answer to that, really, is there? You know, it was funny talking with Michael Waltrip yesterday and sitting there at lunch with the three of them. They're very nice. He's really very good. Well, he should be confident in traffic. That's what they do. But we came up with another idea for a show featuring me and those guys. It would be called "You're Not From Around Here, Are You?" and in this case, it's roles reversed, because they certainly are not from around here, yet they're doing a great job.
He asked the engineers, they have a translator to translate redneckese into Italian for setup changes.
You made that up.
I get the feeling Clint's a lot more sophisticated than he lets on.
Yeah, that's
tries to keep
part of his shtick.
Keeps the bar low in terms of expectations.
I know another NASCAR driver, Mr. Brian Vickers, that loves to turn on the redneck.
The gap first to second in the overall. Bourdais over Rojas now in the 01 Ganassi car. Just under 3 seconds. And just a second further back, Dario Franchitti in the second Ganassi machine. Now here's Oz Negri. We spoke earlier about the training accident he suffered, damaging his right leg at absolutely the worst time as they were getting ready to campaign here at the Rolex 24. But he's a quick healer. He got a doctor's permission to drive, and now he's finding out exactly what he can do with that injured right leg. Would have been better if it had been his left, I would think. Let's go back to the garage area where Jamie Howe has the story of another casualty.
And it's the number 43 from Team Salem. They're going to be in the garage area for another 15 or 20 minutes, replacing a broken input shaft. This team has done a lot of work over the winter, stepping up from the GT ranks to Daytona prototypes. They've done a lot of test days, but as we all know, there is no test quite like racing. And unfortunately, they have had a casualty today, but the team said they will get back out.
See the names of the drivers. The Nonamaker family, Joe, Wayne, Will, have raced with Grand Am for many, many years in the GT class, and now they've moved up to Daytona prototype in a big way with a pair of cars at Team Salem. We'll be back to Daytona in a moment. The Rolex 24 at Daytona is brought to you by Royal Purple, the performance oil that outperforms. And by Continental Tire, innovative technology, driving confidence. Beautiful rosy lights settling over Daytona International Speedway, and the party has just begun. Out in the midway with Tommy Kendall and Justin Bell. I'm Bob Varsha. Andrew Marriott and Jamie Howe are down in the pit lane. There are the spotters high above our announce position, which is high above start finish.
Here we have a battle for the lead. Sebastian Bourdais in the Starworks car, and that's Memo Rojas in the 01 Chip Ganassi Sabatis car.
And they've really had a very solid run here for the last. Oh, he just gets a bit sideways out there on the marbles. It's already building up out there, and it'll be interesting to see how that affects him through the fast kink, as he did take a wider line there. But Rojas is not giving him any call today. He's filling up his mirrors.
I think Sebastian took the inside in here thinking he might have some stuff on his tires. It's always toughest being the first guy to the traffic. The guy behind usually gets through easier than the guy in front.
That was a nice move there. He's giving himself a bit of clear air as he comes onto the banking. And look, Memo's stuck there on the outside of those Porsches. Always an instant of nervousness, just as you go out there thinking, I hope they know I'm here, because it's messy if they don't. But the driving standard so far, I think, has been excellent.
Yeah, we really haven't seen much misbehavior out there, and that's usually the first thing the drivers complain about.
Although I'm sure that...
I'm looking at you, Justin Bell.
Exactly, thank you very much. I'm sure if we were down there, they'd be able to tell us a couple of tales, because something is happening every corner, every second of this race. But I tell you, Bourdais has a really fast car on exit. He comes out of the bus stop really very well. But if you're in second place right now, what's the rush? You're comfortable, you can pace it, you can let him to get to traffic first, as you just said. So I wouldn't be in a hurry to overtake unless I really was faster.
Look at that BMW that's been strong all weekend on the banking, closing up big time. Like Pruitt said, though, the only strategy now is it's an interesting way to put it, waiting for the hours to click off and just not making mistakes.
Yet making 100 in split-second decisions every lap. And you know, we saw it at Le Mans with McNeish's crash, 2 years ago, and everyone was saying, oh, what a terrible decision he made. But he made 10,000 good decisions before that bad one. And that's what happens around here. You rely on the traffic, you make a decision. And before the night is out, I know we're going to be talking about someone hitting someone. And, it was a decision that didn't go right. So far, it's falling the right way.
Board with Bourdais as he goes around the GT Audi.
The pace, I'm a little surprised with only one yellow. I mean, if this was a distance race, we'd be, but you can't hurry up the clock. But the cars that are trying to get laps back, part of the procedures that they put in place, they work really hard. In the years past, you used to have yellows depending where the overall leader was, the GT cars get penalized. They've worked that all out, and you've got the ability to get laps back under yellow. We just haven't had enough yellows.
Top 3 cars in the overall, covered by about 4.5 seconds. And on the left, you see an incident in the pits. The 31 car, the Corvette right there, left its pit, but they had a big fuel spill. What do we know, Jamie?
Well, Bob, fuel spilled all over pit lane. It looks like the nozzle that connects to the car is what broke off of the hose, and when that broke off, fuel just went everywhere. You see the safety team and the team now putting some dry onto the fuel, trying to soak it up a little bit, because it is a lot of fuel and it's a big safety concern. Safety clean going out. 31 still stopped on pit lane.
That is a lot of fuel.
The fact that the car is still there tells me that it probably left maybe with the nozzle still plugged in.
But if it's broken into the top of the neck there,
at the dry brake.
The dry brake, he can't go, can he? This is a great battle, and there's people right now this time of night. It's a great time for the fans to be out there watching, and they're still relatively sober, in relatively being a term, so they can watch.
Yeah, we took a drive around the infield. A lot of folks having a lot of fun. I believe the infield is pretty much sold out for this running of the Rolex 24.
I autographed a rubber chicken on the way from the infield studio. That's a first for me.
You did, I saw
We're
that.
Playing a version of horseshoes or whatever with rubber chickens.
Well, it's nice to know your fan base is still alive, or rubberized.
And while you were doing it, I regaled the crew with tales of the chicken car, which you own.
Indeed.
I assume you still own.
It will be the last thing I own. The last thing to go, Bob. Times will have to get real hard.
You got pictures at Facebook or somewhere where fans can go see the chicken car?
Facebook has El Gallo Grande has his own Facebook page.
Driver mistake there. Bourdais ran the curve on the inside, and he just hit the bump on the inside, Bob, there. Lost momentum, and there Memo was able to go right around the outside. Very nice driving, though. He didn't block, he didn't contest. He knew that he knew he messed up in the middle of the bus stop.
A little bit of a role reversal. Last year, the Starburst car, before the damage, had so much speed, and the Ganassi cars really didn't have it. And they ran a mistake-free race for most of the race, kept themselves close, but just never showed much real speed.
2 years ago, the Action Express team came here in their debut at Grand Am Rolex Racing in the Rolex 24, and they won. And now, we talked earlier about the Snow family, Melanie and son Madison, who are driving in the same car here at the Rolex 24. We have a brother act going on at Action Express, but Bert and Brian Frizzell are driving different sister cars in the same team. Burt running in the 9 car, currently in 4th place. Brother Brian back in 7th in the 5 car.
And anyone that's been around here knows what a family affair. It's not just the brothers. Their dad, Brad Frizzell, has been around racing for 35 years. The Monza that he took to Le Mans was here this weekend. Anyone that used to follow the Can-Am, the Frisbee, the Frizz and Frisbee, is Brad Frizzell. Developed that car that Alan Jr., Paul Tracy, all those guys raced. And he's been really active in trying to get these guys' career, helping maneuver and so forth. I talked to him at the test. He says, I don't have a job. I have absolutely nothing to do. I said, how are you doing that? He said, well, I'm trying to enjoy it. But he said, I need something to do. But they finally got into top DP prototype equipment and different ones. And so they're racing against each other. I tried to get him to tell me stories, one versus the other. And they said, you know, we really just support each other. It's almost too good to be true. There was no dirt. There was no, you know, nastiness. It's just a really cool family story.
There's Burt in the 4th place Action Express, number 9. Oops.
Oh, got the wheel on the inside.
Yeah, he'll be really glad you showed that one after talking so glowingly about his brother.
Brad Frizzell is also a 12 Hours of Sebring winner, and I mentioned that mainly because I want to remind you, you will see the 12 Hours of Sebring here on Speed in March.
Of course, you raced with your brother.
I raced with my older brother. I sure did. And that's one of the Kendall family trivias. Between my dad, my brother, and I, what's the only Kendall that never won Sebring? They love to tell that one. I don't tell it very often because it's me.
Another break coming up, and we'll be back as darkness descends at Daytona International Speedway. Plenty to do at Daytona. Welcome back to Speed's coverage, now 3.5 hours in the 2013 edition of one of the world's great motorsports classics, the Rolex 24. I'm Bob Varsha, joined now by Calvin Fish and Dorsey Schrader. High above start finish, down in the pit lane, Chris Neville and Matt Yoakum. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday night. As you can see, a lot going on in the infield. There's the number 13 Audi Rum Bum team, owned by Luis Bacardi of Distilled Spirits fame, hence the name. The 56 is in. Clint Boyer behind the wheel. Matt Yoakum is there.
And Bob, he's going to do a double stint. He'll run one more time, and then Rob Kaufman will get in the race car. Clint says the car, very good, nice drive. Rob says one thing that people almost underestimate how smooth Clint is behind the wheel. Yes, he won Sprint Cup race at Sonoma last year on the road course. He told me the biggest thing for him, endurance racing in Cup is similar to running in Grand Am. He's used body-wise to running long distances. It's just all the other nuances that our experts in the booth have talked about all race long. They have topped him off with some Sunoco, and he's away. Chris?
Well, Matty, just checked the track temp out here at the beginning of the race. It was 95 degrees, about 80-degree ambient temperature. Just checked that track temp down to 65 degrees. And talking with some of these teams, they definitely were dealing with cars that were either a little bit tight or a little bit loose in the first couple hours of this race. But most of the engineers and crew chiefs said they really didn't want to make any changes because we were going to have 13 hours of darkness here. And they knew that that track temp was going to come down. These cars were going to change drastically. So it's going to be very interesting over these next couple hours. Now do you see these teams starting to make some changes?
Yeah, we heard Scott Pruitt when he got out talking about how much cooler the track was after his first long stint than what it was like at about 3:30 Eastern time when the race began. There's another NASCAR star, Jamie McMurray.
Watching that monitor, you know, getting ready to go in there. I'll tell you one thing. Tonight would be the optimum night to drive a race car around Daytona. We've got a full moon. We've got all these lights, which we didn't used to have. It's absolutely wonderful outside, maybe 58 degrees. It would be fun right now to go out there and haul around this great racetrack.
It really is. These are perfect conditions for this 24-hour race. There's no threat of rain throughout the course of the 24 hours, certainly forecast. and the track is in really good shape, and everyone's starting to get in the rhythm. They're making those little chassis adjustments that Chris mentioned, but you don't want to go too far. You don't want to chase the track too much, because it is changing. As it starts to cool off and that track temperature comes down, that will change the balance of the race car. But we saw Jamie Mack getting ready. That was a prescribed rotation for that 02 car. It's going to be Dixon, Franchitti, Jamie Mack, and then Joey Handel going forward. That's a pretty strong driver lineup they've got there with the 02. And the nice thing with the 02 is they're not thinking of the big picture, Dorsey. They can go for an outright win here. The 01, they got to think about the championship as well. So it's a little different kind of complexion to the race for them.
Good point right there, Calvin. Jordan Taylor just really got loose in the brake zone down there in this big group of Daytona prototype cars that are all fighting for each other. He almost got it turned around. Good save.
Pit stop for the number 30 GT leader when they pitted. Patrick Pillet, Porsche factory driver from France, remains in the car. Getting back to temperatures, the overnight temperature expected to be about 54 degrees, about 20 degrees cooler Fahrenheit than it was at the heat of the day.
I'll tell you what, these tires are performing beautifully. The Continental tire, they're in a different compound and construction to what they ran here last year. This is the DPI tire on the Daytona prototype and the GTI on the GT machines. A tire that they really designed for Indianapolis, but has worked really well on a number of courses. And all of the teams seem to be very happy with the balance and also the longevity, how many miles you can put on. Typical run here with the DP is about 27, 28 laps. We had teams doing some 60 laps on the same set of tires, so you expect them to double stint at night. Chris?
Yeah, Calvin, Dario Franchitti getting out, handing over to Jamie McMurray. The team's taking a little bit more time with these stops, not just fuel and tires, but watching these crew members. Some of them looking into these wheel wells, checking things like drive shaft boots, trying to see if there's anything, any tears on any of those boots or anything potentially leaking. It looked like on the left rear corner, the crew member was making a small fix over here. Nothing on the outside of the car now that the wheel is on, so maybe something up underneath that wheel well. But still, they got everything done before all the work on the car.
And back into battle they go. 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. I was about to say we were watching a battle for 5th place between the 99 and the 10, but the Red Dragon Gainsco machine now makes a pit stop.
On your right side of the screen there, the 60 machine trying to claw its laps back after, in fact, it was a clever stroke which basically disconnected the front tie rod on the left corner. A.J. Allmendinger supposedly was in the king, Dorsey, on the infield as opposed to on the banking, but still had a bit of a scare. And Oz Negri, you saw him limp away there on the driver change, and he's got his 30 minutes in. They'll score championship points. What's going on at the Gainsco squad, Chris?
Well, Mamo Kidley getting out of the everything looks great on that Corvette right now. Noticed a little bit of a fire up in the right front wheel well on the brakes there. Typically that's a little bit of debris on that brake rotor. As soon as they come to pit lane, that stuff kind of flare up and cause a little bit of fire, but no real concern there. Darren Law getting his chance behind the wheel.
Darren Law is distinctive among all of the drivers in the Grand Am ranks. He's the only driver who has run every race in the Rolex under Grand Am sanction. 162, I believe, to this point.
It'll be interesting to see if he can continue that streak. Bobby does not have a full-time ride for the year. Left the Action Express squad at the end of 2012. Picked up the ride as the 3rd driver, 4th driver, the extra driver, let's call it, with the Gainsco squad. But he's really focusing on his job as COO at the Bonneville Racing School, and he's pretty content with that, Dorsey. He recognizes that maybe do a handful of races, but not full-time any longer.
Let's get down and find out how Oz Negri fared in his first day in the car with Matt Yoakum.
A quick debrief with teammates. And Oz, how is the foot, the leg?
Foot is okay. I will probably know in a few minutes, but it gave me no problem driving. You know, just getting used to the left foot braking. I think by, you know, after 5-6 laps, I got that down, the proper brake pressure that I should apply with my left foot. But it's all good.
The passion is about this race, but also bigger picture is about the entire season. Are you done, or will you go for another stint later?
We will be very honest. I'm going to be very honest with myself, and if I feel I can do more, I'll let the team know. And, you know, if they need me, I'll be there. Thank you.
I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. He hurt himself in a triathlon. This is a man who's in very, very good shape. If you can see the amount of sweat on his face right there, he had worked very hard for what he just did. I'd back it off and save that leg.
And remember, they have Marcus Ambrose there to spell Horas de Daytona if they need to. Chris Neville.
Well, Bob, Memo Rojas, your overall leader in pit lane, just fuel on this stop. They took a tear off the windshield, now cleaning that grill. Quite a bit of rubber debris on the drill right now, but obviously we've got nice cool temperatures, so no issues with the temperature in that car. Memo Rojas up and he's out.
Nice routine stop there. That was a 28-lap stint for Memo Rojas with the BMW engine. Seems like the Ford may be sneaking a little bit more than that, so that may be a factor as we get towards the end of the race. But certainly the Ganassi boys seem to have two very strong cars here, and Chris, you're with one of their drivers.
Yeah, we just saw Dario Franchitti get out of the O2 car. And Dario, you got to do that transition daytime to nighttime. Track temp has come down 30 degrees. What's it like driving out there right now?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's usual problem here is managing traffic. Sometimes you get out your way and you feel like a hero and you're catching the cars in front. And the next couple of 5 laps, it doesn't go your way, and back you go a bit. So just managing traffic, try not to beat up on the car too much yet. A long, long way to go, which I'm sure every person you've interviewed has said. But no, the target car is pretty good. So just doing laps right now, try not to screw it up.
Well, when I saw you get out of the car, you put a headset on and you were talking to the crew up here, Mike Hall and the engineers, and you did some motions like you were shifting the car. Is there a problem with the shifter?
No, I was just telling them occasionally, hit the limiter when you try and shift first to second. So that's all. No real problems with the car. Car feels pretty good. So.
Okay, maybe that's something we saw with the initial start. Scott Dixon losing a couple spots, and then on that restart, also I think that was Dario Franchitti behind the wheel on that one restart. That they got jumped by a couple cars behind them.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Chris. I was going to make the same point. That's what caught Scott Dixon out. He got into that limiter, and then it stops the engine from really shifting correctly. And you drop down to first gear 3 times around this race circuit, so the boys have got to be careful of that. As the tires start to lose a little bit of grip, Dorsey, suddenly you spin those tires up, and you'll be catching that rev limiter before you shift to second.
A little off-road here by the 63 Ferrari as he's shortcutted the chicane. No advantage gain, so there will be no penalty. That's a software issue more than likely, Calvin, with that shifting problem. Something with that between first and second is just a little bit onto too high side.
Third place DP, Jordan Taylor, in the number 10 Velocity Worldwide Corvette DP. You mentioned that not that much damage, but that car that Alessandro Perguidi took off just a moment ago, his teammate Olivier Beretta did the same thing with him the last hour. There's only so many times you can do that before you're going to hurt something.
Yeah, and I think they smoothed off that grass area through there. Usually take a ride through. They typically dig in, but they've got lucky a couple of times. 10 team looking strong, Chris. They're coming on. What do you see?
Yeah, nice clean stop by this team. We all They got 4 new Continental tires on there, Sunoco fuel in, and it was interesting looking at this team. They really took their time. Their crew members have lights on their helmet, and the crew members, especially at the back end of the car, they were looking up underneath the car in the wheel wells, taking those precious extra seconds, just trying to look for anything that potentially could go wrong.
Overall leading cars in. Sebastian Bourdais in the number 2. Driver change. Alan McNish gets in.
Who can forget that battle last year, Dorsey, with he and AJ? That was sensational stuff, which we documented on the front end of this show. He is a terrier, this man. He's finished second 3 times here. The only 3 times he's finished in the runner-up position. He wants that overall win really, really badly. They came up 5.5 seconds short last year with a damaged race car. If they can keep that car underneath them this year, maybe they'll have a shot at their first win. But those BMW-powered Ganassi cars look awfully tough to beat today.
We wanted to get mad at them because of the over-aggressive driving style, but on the other side of that coin is they're both friends of ours, and that's just the way they are. AJ and this man are just very competitive.
So he's still working on his belts there, Bob. Yeah. He's not tucked in, and he needs to get that sorted because he could have been under power here pretty shortly. You don't want to be taking your eyes off the road here, and some of the best guys in the business have crashed right there into that wall, particularly when it gets really cold at night, which we're not likely to say over the overnight hours this year, but sometimes when it drops into the high 30s, 40-degree range, it's tough to get a turn down here.
We saw Horas de Daytona, then we saw Dario Franchitti, both sweating profusely when they got out of the cars. Here comes another sweat hog, if you will, with Matt Yoakum.
Bob Simon Pagano just got out of the race car after doing a double stint. Wayne Nonemaker in. So how was the race car dealing with some cooling issues for both driver and car?
Yeah, there was no cooling working in the car, so man, it's a tough way to restart the season, but it is what it is. Hopefully, if the car is reliable, it should be in good shape. It's definitely, the car has become better with the fresh air in the night, so we'll see how it goes, but as long as it's reliable, we should be okay.
Earlier, Katie told me that you guys had a little bit of a balance issue when the sun was out and it was so hot earlier.
Yeah, it was very difficult to drive. The car had a little bit of everything, a lot of movement, so it was very difficult to feel what was happening. But we got through it. It got colder and the car came alive.
Thank you, Simon. Let's go from one Frenchman to another. Chris Neville?
Yeah, you're talking about balance issues down there on the Salins car. Also, Sebastian Bourdais, you were just telling me some potential balance issues with your car. What's going on with the two?
Yeah, I was struggling pretty bad. I mean, I don't know how we got in the lead, to be honest. After the pit sequence, the guys must have done an awesome job, but we're a bit short on top speed compared to the BMW, and we have a lot of understeer in the middle, so it's a big fight out there.
Yeah, big fight out there, but you're really the only team that's been able to take it to the Ganassi crew and get the lead, so obviously you do have some speed in the car.
Yeah, I think the track is pretty difficult since the beginning because the lap times are not very fast, and it's very unforgiving. On the braking zone, it's super easy to lock wheels, to shoot long, so you really need to calm things down and be very accurate. So that's the hardest thing with the traffic going on.
Sebastian Bourdais having another good run with Peter Barron's team. He won at the Brickyard last year in the first ever Grand Am Rolex event there.
Dangerous moment now. We've got the 68. Is he high-centered on that curb in the chicane?
I've seen this car have a similar incident about an hour ago, so they're having some problems too down in that area of the racetrack. We've documented the 63 Ferrari.
That was Brad Lewis in the car before. Now Jim McKalian has taken over, president of the Grand Prix Association of Long Beach.
I said on the track map at the beginning of the show that corner, every racetrack has a corner that gives everybody the fit, and this is it right here. Now he's under braking all by himself, locked up the rear brakes, probably just jammed on the brakes too hard, didn't get that settled time between off throttle to brake. But anyway, just turned right around.
Well, he's back underway. The wiser for the incident. Another break coming up. Brian Till will take over my seat when we return to the Rolex 24 at Daytona. There's a look at your top 5 in each class. Stay with us.
Now, if that is the kind of excitement we've had up till now, just imagine what is in store. The fans, well, they're going to be warm tonight and maybe cook a little bit of dinner on the campfires beginning to glow out in the infield. Here's a look at the overall standings. We've seen the 0-1 be strong from the get-go, still up top. Looking through the second 20 there, and some good teams as well. Paul Tracy, we talked about the IndyCar star running well with Doran Racing, and they are running there in 11th. 15th, the first of the GT cars, and the Ferraris are there. Look a little further. Marco Holzer starts the 21st position right now and working his way, leading another Porsche, and then one of the Audis. A lot of talent very deep in this field. You saw the names of drivers that you recognize from Le Mans. Spencer Pumpelly, a Porsche stalwart there. 35th right now at Park Place Motorsports. They've had problems with both of their cars, and they're working those bugs out. It was a lug nut on the left front of both of those. And looking back through the rest of the field, Jim McKalian with a problem just moments ago. And some other problems. Bruno Junqueira, the 43 for Team Salin, the sister car to the 42. They had a good run going early on, and then they had some problems with an input shaft that they had to have taken care of. Live out on the racetrack right now, it's Memo Rojas who leads. And past winners, we've got plenty of them here, and Chris Neville is with one.
Well, Brian, earlier today we talked to Anthony Davidson about his massive wreck at Le Mans. It was 2 years ago this June that Mike Rockenfeller also had a massive wreck at Le Mans. Mike, down one of the back straightaways, you got into another car, or another car got into you. You went up over the guardrail and into the trees, and it was an incredibly scary moment for all of us that have known you. What was that like? I mean, do you remember much about that wreck?
Well, I mean, I didn't go over the guardrail. I was still in between. Yeah, it was the worst moment for sure in my career, and I'm very lucky to be here. And basically, like 3 weeks after that crash, I could do my next race in DTM. So I was, like I said, really fortunate to have no big injuries. But of course, it was a big shame, you know, to miss that chance to win the race again. And yeah, I still would do the same move. And if I look at it, you know, it was. I still don't understand what this guy did on the straight with his Ferrari, but yeah, I mean, after that, I think, you know, he's still driving, and you know, that's part of the game. And yeah, you always have to take or to choose what you do when you overtake. And for me, it was clear, so I would do the same thing again.
Now, you won with this team back in 2010. That was the Generation 2 car. What do you think of the Generation 3 Corvette?
Well, so far, I mean, we are not the quickest out there, but the car is fun to drive. I didn't drive at the pre-test, so I need to get still some laps to go up to speed, but the race is long enough. But I think we are looking strong. The team is great. I mean, so far we are in the top 5, which is good. You know, it's a long race. You need to be there tomorrow, like everybody knows, when it counts. And yeah, we try our best. And first, now I will get in the car and yeah, get my rhythm, and then we will see how it goes.
Yeah, on that next pit stop, we'll see Rocky get behind the wheel.
Well, the 50-plus Predator team trying to find their rhythm. They had problems early on, but for the Highway to Help group, problems have risen again, this time a right front. It's not going well at all for this team today, Dorsey.
You got about a half a lap to go. You can see the tires shredded. It's doing its weed whacker deal and trying to disassemble the car, and it's a long way back. However, Carlos Picassé, they're doing a good job of keeping the speed down. He's down on the apron out of the way, just trying to get it home.
Yeah, it's a long road home, and you can hear the damage that the bodywork is taking. Hopefully it doesn't get involved in the suspension area. If it's just bodywork, you can change the nose. That's not a big lengthy fix, but if it starts cutting into other stuff, that becomes a problem.
This was down into turn 1. Did he get hit? The car definitely wiggled, or was that just a problem with the braking?
He had a puncture, and the tire was low, and it just blew right there. But the wiggles from the puncture wasn't down totally, but it was definitely deflating.
Yeah, he probably weren't sure initially. Maybe it was a car spun off to the left side there as he's coming out of the International Horseshoe.
When you, as you said, Calvin, you worry about the suspension components, the brake lines and such on that right front suspension. Bodywork, as you pointed out, easily replaceable. Even the front splitter can be replaced in short order. But you start to get into the suspension, it becomes a big problem.
Big problem. I mean, the nose can be changed in a matter of seconds. If it gets into the splitter, which is now a 2-part deal on the Generation 3 Rileys, that's about a 3 to 4 minute change by an experienced team. And no disrespect to this group, but they're probably not as well rehearsed as some of the more regular teams in the series.
Well, Matt, the 50 team has to be kind of scratching their heads a little bit, wondering what's going on there.
Brian, they were debriefing on the radio, and their biggest question was, where do they believe if contact was made, where on the racetrack was it? They were trying to get the radio communication back and forth, and he was having difficulty hearing out on the racetrack. And then he responded by saying, simply, I believe it was turn 1. So they told him to gingerly bring that car back to not cause any more damage, and then they're going to change the tires.
That's exactly where it was. He got together with the 9 car. That is that wiggle that we saw, and perhaps the splitter on the 9 just kind of cut down that right front tire.
Yeah, Bert Frizzell was trying to, you can kind of go down there and kind of bleed around the outside, but Carlos didn't realize that Bert was trying to make that move and kind of kept the car straight, trying to diamond the corner. There was contact, and obviously that was what cut the tire down.
Hey, brothers Frizzell going at it here. On the same team, different car.
Elton Sawyer, who calls the shots down at Action Express, I'm sure on the radio to both of these drivers right now. Nelson Piquet Jr. in the 5, Bert Frizzell in the 9. Trying to tell these boys we got a long way to go, and we do. We'll bring it all to you. 0-1, Memo Rojas leading Jamie McMurray, his teammate, right behind. That's the way they started this event. Is that the way they'll finish it? We still have a long way to go and a lot of questions yet to be answered. We'll be back to Daytona.